This lecture is on section 5.2, which is polynomial functions and adding and subtracting polynomials. So the first thing we have to go over is some definitions. The first definition is what is a term in terms of a polynomial. So if I have an expression like this, the terms are going to be all of these, either numbers or variables that can have coefficients and powers. So a term, the definition from your book is it's a number or the product of a number and a variable raised to a power. The next term is coefficients. So it's the largest number that can be factored out of a term. Like in the example above, the coefficient of 5x cubed is going to be 5. The coefficient of 3x squared is going to be 3. And then if you have something like x plus 2, and you want to find the coefficient of the x, remember that x is the same as 1x, so we could factor a 1 out of the x. So the coefficient of x is 1. The same thing if I had a negative x, coefficient of the negative x is negative 1. So the topic of this chapter is something called a polynomial. A polynomial is a sum of terms of the form ax to the n, where a is a real number, and n is a whole number. And remember, whole numbers include 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. So some examples of a polynomial. I could have one like this. This has 5 terms. We typically write a polynomial with the powers descending, so the biggest power comes first, the 5, and then 4, then 2, then this is x to the 1. And then we put the 2 last because we can think of that as like 2x to the 0 power, because anything to the 0 power is just 1. So that's why the constant goes last, which brings me to another term. That is a constant. So it's a term that is just a number. Some other terms you'll see in this section are monomial, binomial, and trinomial. So this is a that one has a monomial has one term. Like 2x or 3x squared. Then a binomial has 2 terms. And the trinomial has 3 terms. For example, here's a polynomial with 3 terms. So another concept that is important to polynomials is degree. So the degree of a term is the sum of the powers on the variables in the term. So a term can have more than one variable. Like, for example, 2x squared y cubed. This is still all one term, but it has multiple variables. So if you remember from 5.1, there is a product rule of exponents that says if you have a number to a power times that number to another power, the product is going to be the same number raised to the sum of the powers. So that's kind of the same idea here. We're looking at the sum of the powers here. So we would say this has degree 5, adding together the 2 and 3. If I had something like this, I would take the 3 plus the 4, and there's just one c, so I would add another 1. So this would have degree 8. Another thing I want to mention, if you have a term that's just like y or 2y, 2x, something like that, where it just has the variable raised to the 1 power, your degree is always 1. So our final term before we start adding polynomials is the degree of a polynomial, which is different from the degree of a term. So to find the degree of a polynomial, you look at the terms and find the term with the highest degree. And then that is going to be the degree of the polynomial. So 5x cubed has the highest degree of all the terms in this polynomial. So the degree of the polynomial is 3. Those are all the terms that you need for this section. Now we're going to start adding and subtracting polynomials. So to add and subtract in polynomials, it's just like the same techniques that you've been using in linear equations. You're going to combine the like terms and add the coefficients. So if I wanted to simplify this polynomial here, I would look first and see what the like terms are. And so this term has an x squared, so I'd look and see if any of the other terms have an x squared, and none of them do. So that one's just going to stay the way it is. Now the second term has an xy. And there is one other term with an xy. So I'm going to combine those two. And then this term here is a y squared, and that's not going to combine with anything else. So I'll add those together. And that would be as far as you could simplify that. You have to be careful when you're looking at terms and deciding which ones are like terms and are not like terms. So for something to be a like term, all of the variables in the term have to be raised to the same power as the one that you're trying to add it with. So this and this are not like terms. Because here the x is raised to the third power and y is just to the 1 power, and it's the opposite here. The y is raised to the third power. But this and this have the same kind of term with that x cubed y. So I can add those two together. I'm just moving the like terms next to each other. The xy cubed is on its own, and then I have 20 and plus 1, which are like terms as well. So combine those two and leave that one alone. And this would be my final answer. That's as far as I can simplify that. Here's a final example where you have to do a little bit of distributing. The first thing I'm going to do is distribute that negative. And again, I like to move the like terms next to each other before I combine them. So I'm taking that negative x cubed and putting it over there. And now I'm going to move the 2x cubed. That leaves me with the 4x and 6. So when I add x cubed minus x cubed, that is going to give me 0. So I don't have an x cubed anymore. That's going to be 6x squared. I can get rid of the 0. And that's my final answer. So those are the basic techniques for adding and subtracting polynomials.